Welcome to the next episode of the Cannabis Review. I'm delighted to be joined in this episode by Debra Borchardt, who's the co-founder and executive editor at the renowned Green Market Report. How are you keeping today, Debra?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on your show.
I'm absolutely delighted to have you on. One of the most perfect sources of information in the cannabis industry is the Green Market Report, so I'm delighted to get the chance to talk to you. Can we maybe start with giving everybody a little overview of your position in the industry and how you came to be there?
Sure. So my background is actually Wall Street. I worked on Wall Street for over 15 years and had several securities licenses. But I got really burned out on the business. And one of the things that I did enjoy when I was working on Wall Street was talking about companies. And so I went to New York University and got my master's degree in business and economic reporting. And from there, I went to work at the street with Jim Cramer. And while I was there was really when we started to see cannabis stocks come to fruition. But it was really sketchy back then. It was a lot of companies that would just put the word marijuana in the title of the company and change the ticker and make it look like it was this cannabis company when it really wasn't. So it was great news picking, lots of drama, lots of shady characters, lots of stock fraud. So I started covering cannabis back then, and then I went out on my own, was freelancing. But I just wasn't, the places I was working for, I wasn't really seeing the kind of coverage that I wanted to do. So I felt like there was this opening in the market to have a website that really targeted financial news for the cannabis industry and really treated it like any other industry. Most of the stuff we saw at that time was really cultural and lifestyle types of publications for cannabis, not so much business news that was really focused on the financial world. And that's why I started Green Market Report. And we've been online for 7 years this summer. So that's very exciting. I can't believe we're still online for 7 years just because it's tough in media. It's a really hard place to be. And I always like to joke with people, like, I don't know what's harder, cannabis or media. And then Crane Communications acquired us in October 2021. So we're part of the Crane Communications family now. And they've been great partners and really invested in us and really wants us to succeed in the long term.
Yeah, you guys are definitely one of the most highly revered sources of information in the market, especially when, as you said, there's amount of misinformation and fibs that get told in this industry over the last couple of years. Having that North Star like the Green Market Report has always been advantageous for real entrepreneurs and business people. The actual story behind the Green Market Report, who was it that co-founded you with it? Were there the first couple of years a tough slog? What's the exact trajectory for the Green Market Report?
Thank you. So my partners were Cynthia Salarizada and Vince Patetti, and they left the company when we were acquired by Crane. And so right now, our focus has been on events and digital advertising. We've got some plans to do some different types of things, hopefully by the end of this year. We really feel like there's an opportunity to present more information on these cannabis companies. Whereas right now it's kind of broken up. When you're looking for information, financial information on these companies, it's really hard to find. There's different websites that focus on different pieces, maybe acquisitions and deals, and another one might focus on, something more like, the legal news. So we're going to hopefully try to create some kind of research center where we can pull all these things together. Just because we feel like it's really fragmented. And thank you for the comment on the journalism, because that's really been our North Star. Our main mission is to deliver good journalism. And it's hard to do that. And you're right. There's a lot of cannabis companies that would prefer to just have us take the press releases and run with it. But we do a little bit of a deeper dive into the earnings. We always go into the filings and see what's really there, because the earnings announcements themselves tend to be a lot of very positive spin, which is understandable. But to your point, I think the investors and people within the industry want to hear the truth and whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, and I think one of the cornerstones of your guys' operation is the open source insights and analysis, and how important that is from, as I said, an investor and entrepreneur's point of view to be able to actually have real and correct information, because we've seen whether it's products being lab tested and the THC content being inflated, or whether it's financial returns and people basically just trying to pump and dump the stock, even to a degree, reports being generated by so-called consultancy companies that are given these valuations of $50 billion a year for this market and 20 for this market. Having you guys provide this open source insights and analysis is so important. Was that the core objective from the outset, is to ensure, okay, we're going to provide the most up-to-date and correct information for everybody?
Absolutely. You know, you do take a little bit of criticism for doing this type of work, because, you know, when I first started doing this, I was considered negative and I wasn't an advocate for the industry. And I don't consider myself an advocate, nor do we do advocacy reporting. We just do reporting. So, and I love the cannabis industry. I think some of the best people I've met have been in the industry. It's been one of my favorite beats to cover. But having said that, you're still dealing with an industry that ultimately is federally illegal in the United States. So you do have a lot of shady characters still roaming around the cannabis industry. And to me, that's important. One of the things that struck me early on in my reporting was how many small investors, retail investors, that lost maybe all their savings investing in cannabis companies because they read something that they thought was true when it really wasn't. And I really felt for these people. And so the thing is that investor that invests $500, $1,000, maybe even $10,000, they're just not given the same attention by mainstream media because they're not big investors. These are penny stocks. And so no one really covers them. And to me, that was something that kind of became my mission, was I want to make sure that if companies are ripping people off, that we expose that so that they can't continue to do this to other people. And that's been a real focus of mine, and something that, you know, we get emails all the time from readers saying, oh, I'm so glad you published that story. I was about to work with so-and-so, and now I see they're not paying their bills, or now I see that they con people out of money. You know, thank you for letting me know that. So that's been something that makes us feel good about what we're doing.
Yeah, for sure. The investors, especially a lot of them, if you're a consumer of cannabis, you're in the culture of cannabis. It's a very distinct market that if you're in the culture of cannabis, you want to be part of the success. So you do see these smaller retail investors putting in a couple of €100, a couple of €1,000. That might be a huge chunk of their savings, and ensuring that those people are protected is definitely a bonus for everybody in the industry, I think, because nobody wants to burn the small retail investors, I don't think.
Right, right. And to be fair, there are some companies that are performing very well. And we do highlight those too. So we try to do that. We also really focus heavily on female-owned companies, you know, because that's important to me. So we try to make sure that the female executives and female-owned companies also get their fair shake in the media.
Yeah, well, that's that. Having an equal balance in any industry is very important. Never less so the cannabis industry, because it shouldn't be just a select few get to profit off this industry when the culture is so wide and diverse and touches every demographic and every nuance of the human race.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the next thing I want to talk about, which is big news for everybody. It seems to be that there's these three big things in America. It's the rescheduling, it's the Safe Banking Act, and the third one was the Florida recreational ballot. We heard yesterday that this was successful and that a vote will happen in December, if I'm not mistaken.
Actually, November. It'll be in November when we have our big presidential election. So it'll be
So do you want to tell us all about what's happening in Florida, why there's reason to be positive, and what the ramifications could be for the nationwide industry in America?
Sure. So Florida right now is a medical only state. So medical cannabis is legal in the state. And there's some big players like Trulieve has over 130 stores. And it's a pretty well-established medical market. But they have been wanting to transition to an adult use legal market as well, so fully legal. And they've really kind of struggled with getting there. And this time they have done it. The Supreme Court in that state said, yes, it can go on the ballot for the voters to decide. The caveat, though, is that they have to get 60% of the voters to approve this. And that's a pretty big number. It'll be interesting to see what happens. This market is anticipated to be a $6 billion market. It's already at 1.8 billion for medical only. So 3 times that puts it at about 6 billion. And so it's considered a fairly large market. Now, while people think there are quite a few stores already, compared to Michigan and Massachusetts, it's actually understored. So we could see continued expansion in that state, and maybe even a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So there's a lot of focus on it. There's also a lot of focus on it, not just from the business aspect, but also the cultural aspect. This is a state that's gone heavily into conservative politics. They have gone heavily into culture wars. And so we're curious to see what happens here. So will these mostly Republican voters vote for cannabis, or will it drive more Democratic voters to the ballot box to vote for cannabis? It's a toss-up. No one really knows. So there's a lot of focus on this to see what really happens with this vote. I mean, obviously, in addition to the presidential vote, but yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, let's not mention the presidential vote now, and we could do a whole new discussion. There's a lot of earnings reports have been out and are still due. Are we seeing the upward trajectory of the cannabis industry now? Because we know a lot of investors got in 2-3 years ago at the highs, and those those investments would be down substantially. They seem to be around plateauing or getting close to what the original values that people invested are. What do you think is going to be the biggest catalyst for cannabis stocks? Is it going to be Schedule 3 reschedule, and will it be Safe Banking Act? Is it going to be positions that, let's say, North American companies have taken in Europe? Obviously, the likes of Canopy have seen their growth happen with Germany's news lately. What do you think is the catalyst that retail investors could look for?
I think it will really focus on the descheduling. So moving cannabis from a Schedule 1 drug, which in the United States right now makes it as dangerous as heroin, which is insane, and also makes it federally illegal. If it bumps down to 3, that takes all of that away. It opens the companies up to better funding, and it also takes away the tax hit that they've had lately with 280E, which means they can't take business expenses as a deduction. So it's really hard for them to make a profit with that. Safer banking is another piece of legislation that would basically tell the big banks, hey, you can bank with these companies, and we won't go after you for dealing in an illegal substance. That looked like it had a lot of promise, but we're hearing more out of Washington that, again, Republicans are starting to push back on that safer banking. So that's looking less secure than the descheduling. Yeah, I think that we are starting to see valuations pick back up. We've been in a 2-year bear market. And I think between the hope for Schedule 3, which seems much more doable than a safer banking, the hopes for that are building. So maybe this summer we'll see something there. We've also seen a lot of companies really get their houses in order. So you're seeing out of this earnings cycle, more companies paying down debt, more companies cutting back on expenses, really getting their house in order versus just hinging on this whole Schedule 3 thing, which is important to see, so that they're really fixing their balance sheets and making sure that they're taking the right steps to clean up these balance sheets. So that's been a really nice thing to see too. And I think that the investment community is starting to reward those companies that are getting their house in order.
One quick last thing before I let you go. Does Schedule 3 mean that we're going to see a lot of biotech and pharma money come into drug discovery and development and actually flesh out a range of products? Because that surely is the big opportunity for large corporations, is these formulations and the drug discovery and being able to create these products that are gone through clinical trials and could be prescribed by a doctor seems to be the big, huge opportunity in the industry for people who aren't already established.
I think for sure you'll see that. I think you'll also see a lot of interest from beverage companies. And I think you'll see a lot of interest from big tobacco. So big tobacco has been losing customers for years. This isn't a dissimilar product. It's a leaf product that gets often rolled into paper and smoked. Their business has been going down. They've had to stay out of it because of the legal situation. Then you look at the alcoholic beverage side of the business in the states where cannabis has been legalized, alcoholic beverage sales drop. So they certainly would be happy to have that clientele or those sales. So I think you're going to see a little bit more on that side. I think that the biotech side, yes, will be interested. I also think that they've kind of got their sights set more on the psychedelic side of the world at this point. While we're still continuing to see advances in cannabis, medicinal cannabis for sure, in different areas, I think that the excitement there is not as strong as it once was, which is unfortunate. But yeah, it will definitely open up that side of the business for more research and hopefully more medicinal uses for cannabis.
It's been phenomenal talking to you. We're just at our time. For anybody who hasn't been checking out Green Market Report or isn't subscribed or doesn't read their news, I don't know what you've been doing, but the website is below. You should be adding this to your tabs and checking this daily because it's the most up-to-date, best source of financial information in the cannabis industry. Debra, for now, thank you very much for taking your time to do this. It's very much appreciated.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a joy.
Until next episode, everybody.